Welcome in, Frostburg State fans, to another season recap. This time we're covering all of our winter sports. I'm here with Colin Kirkwood, who's our main broadcaster here at the Frostburg Sports Network. So Colin, we'll kick off women's swimming, bringing another championship back to the Berg, the first female championship for a Frostburg sport. Great to see them all year, and they finally bring home that title.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. How exciting for the first women's championship here on campus. Congratulations to all of them. It means a lot.
Men's swimming finishing in third place at that same championship. Some real young talent for both of those teams, and the women's swim team going to miss some senior leadership. The men actually no seniors, so no one that they'll have to replace, but you look at those two teams and two young teams to look for the future for as well.
You get a chance to learn. You get a chance to really meet everybody, see what they're about, see what kind of styles you're going to see and what kind of athletes every school has here. It's just the best way to get things going.
We get into the basketball seasons then, and we'll start out with women's basketball, where it was a season of really just almost where they had a lot of the talent there, but it just didn't show in every game they played. But like we mentioned with swimming, a very young team where you have one graduating senior, you bring back everyone else, and if they can just put some of those pieces together, they could surprise people next year.
Yeah, I mean, I really think you're going to see a step forward in the next season here. A lot of younger players got a chance to get out there on the floor and really play out towards the back end of the season and learn what it's going to be like when they finally, and if they do and when they do, jump into the starting lineup and move on forward through that here. But a lot of points were made, a lot of great games for them to learn from. I mean, you got to play the #1 team in the country twice. And you don't get that kind of chance to learn very often.
And played a lot of the PSAC schools earlier in the season as well for some tough competition, where you look and you know, through the number 2 through the number 10 seeds really in the MEC, and you know, a bunch of those teams, it was Frostburg, we were right there with them, and you know, just some quarters in games where you know, they would get up by 20 points and it was just a little too hard to come back from. But you know, Maggie Sharp was a really impressive transfer. Samia Asima down low was another impressive transfer, and you have some of the pieces there going into next season, like we mentioned, and you know that those can be your building blocks when you bring in a freshman class and get some new life into the program, and really, you know, get to business next year.
And that's really all it's going to come down to, just execution and getting together more as a team and just knowing what to expect from your teammates. And I'm sure once they get out there next season starting at that point, they'll be ready.
We get into men's basketball next, and gave us about the greatest season finale that we've seen here in a long time here at
Boy, what a lot of fun that was.
Beating the number 16 team in the country, or number 17, depending who you ask, Fairmont State, on senior day. 4 seniors that all came up with big games. It just was, the atmosphere in Bobcat Arena was the best we've seen all year. That kind of performance in the second half, holding that team to 28 second half points, is no small feat in and of itself. But just a great way to end a season that, again, highs and lows, but for that way to end it, I mean, just fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely the best way to close the book, you could have said there. I mean, that's the first D2 division rank, you could say they're upsetting in the top 25 ever in school history. So put that in the books there. You got to witness it. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more once we get moving on into the seasons further coming down the road here. It was a lot of fun.
Couple of key players there. Ajay Edwards, who was an All-MEC honorable mention. Really good offensive year for him, averaged over 15 points a game. Was also one of Frostburg's leading rebounders, where you look at him and he's only 5'11", you know, sometimes touching 6 foot. Leading rebounder, you know, in some games for the unit, and just a hard-working guy. Great guy to talk to. Kanan Bartley, another double-digit scorer, averaged on the season. Another great guy to talk to. He's one of the graduating members. 2 guards that Ajay's going to be back next year. You're going to have to replace Kanan. You got to replace Sean Patterson, Jahar Williams, Torrin Stevens. So it will be a new look team next year. But again, you bring Ajay back, you bring some core players. That's going to be a fun team, as it was a very fun team this year as well.
Yeah, Bo Sheen coming back as well here. It'll be nice to see him on the court continuing. Really jumped into that starting role later into the season, was playing very well, and just really spark plugging the entire bench off of that. And it'll be nice to really have everybody mesh, and we'll have some great talent coming in next year. And I'm sure we're going to improve on what we saw in the last game as well as towards the end of the season.
Yeah, one young guy that I wanted to bring up that had some really impressive moments throughout the year, Justin Roseme, who is slotted in as maybe an off-ball guard or a point guard.
Isn't he a great freshman? He played like an upperclassman throughout the entirety of the season. I was really impressed with him multiple times, especially. He played very, very well against number 2 West Liberty both of the times they played them. He just looked fantastic.
Yeah, and so, you know, it'll be very guard-heavy from what's going to come back, and you look at the big men, and obviously Torrin and Sean were kind of the heavy carriers there. Marcellus Carroll might take up that position next year. Maybe the transfer portal, maybe some freshmen to add some depth there as well. But that team especially will be, you would imagine, pretty guard heavy, depending on how, you know, some of the roster lines up. But a fun team to watch, and they really this year defensively seemed to really step things up compared to last year, where this year it was their defense that won them a lot of games. And as mentioned in that last game against Fairmont, it was defense that really carried them.
They had one of the best perimeter defenses in the entire conference towards the back end of the schedule throughout the entirety of that. They made it really difficult for teams to shoot the three, and that was one of the reasons why they were so close to success multiple times and even helped in the Fairmont game as well.
Well, that wraps up all of our winter season sports. So some exciting things to look for next year. A lot of young teams that, as we mentioned, going through Division II. I mean, as some of the Division III players that were talented in their own right, but it's a different world with scholarships and bringing in new players. Right. That young core is really key in getting more people in that, it breathes life into many of these programs. So really excited for next season.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to basketball season. Can't wait for November.
Absolutely. So while we wrap up with the winter, our spring sports will be up next, so you can catch all of that action as well on the Frostburg Sports Network. Be sure to tune in for some of those games. They have some really talented teams as well. But that is our winter season recap. Colin, thank you for joining me here today. Always good to have you on these broadcasts.
Glad to be here as always. Only one more left here when we recap the spring.
All right, well, that will wrap us up. And as always, go Bobcats.